Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, we invite you to listen to part 2 of the series. Chapter 15, Chapter 15, Chapter 15, Full Moon. Chapter 15, Chapter 15, Full Moon. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed and the twins had reached their first month. Jiang Sanlang organized a full moon banquet for his 2 little sons, inviting relatives and friends to partake in the feast. Those who came to offer their congratulations mostly brought their little boys and grandsons. With not enough room on the 6 tables, Jiang Sanlang constructed an open-air tent in the courtyard and arranged a few more banquet tables. "Sanlang, congratulations," said one of the villagers, who had brought several eggs as a gesture of good luck. He teased, "Who would have thought you'd go from having no children to suddenly having 2 sons? We call that saving the best for last, a true surprise, ha." Jiang Sanlang laughed heartily and bowed to the villager. You flatter me, you flatter me. Please come in, the banquet will begin shortly." "All right, you're busy, you're busy." The villager walked into the hall, placed his gift in front of the account book, and asked Jiang Erlang, who was keeping the accounts, to register it. At this time, a few more guests arrived and Jiang Sanlang rushed forward to greet them in the kitchen. The women of the Jiang family, along with Chunyang and her sisters-in-law, were busy cooking and the whole place was bustling. A few of the neighboring women sat on small stools, chatting casually as they washed and chopped the vegetables. The children ran around the courtyard, laughing and playing. For a while, there was a constant stream of people in and out of Jiang Sanlang's house. It was lively. Inside the house, Yingbao was watching over her 2 little brothers' cradles, spinning a rattle drum for them to see. Little Xiaolu lay obediently at her feet, watching everything with big, innocent eyes while chewing on his food. Danny, Ernie, and Yuanbao also gathered around the cradle, craning their necks to observe their identical little cousins. This is the eldest, Jariri, and this one with the round face is his younger brother, he's called Jiang Wu. Yingbao patiently introduced the twin brothers to everyone who came to visit, helping them tell one from the other. Yuanbao blinked his eyes, still confused. But their faces are all round. Danny smacked his little brother, "Silly. One has a round face, the other doesn't." Ernie giggled and added, "Exactly." A puzzled Yuanbao rubbed the back of his neck, feeling a little wronged. After not much time, Jia in the cradle began to squirm and cry, quickly followed by little Wu. When the 2 babies started crying, their 3 siblings panicked and rushed off to get the 3rd aunt. Yingbao, however, was unruffled and slowly comforted her brothers, whispering gently, "Little Jia and Dao are hungry, don't be in such a rush. As soon as your mother comes, you'll have something to eat." Chunyang hurriedly arrived, picked up one of the babies, and began to feed him. The other one cried even louder, as if deeply unsatisfied. With no other choice, Chunyang had to feed both sons simultaneously. Fed and full, the 2 little ones fell into a peaceful sleep. Old Madame Jiang came in and told her 3rd daughter-in-law, "You should rest with the children. You just had a baby, don't overexert yourself. Your sisters-in-law can handle the affairs outside." Chunyang, indeed feeling tired, nodded in agreement. "All right, I'll lay down for a while. I'll leave the kitchen to my sisters-in-law." Old Madame Jiang grunted in agreement, turned and pulled Yingbao up. "Yingbao, go out and play with your brothers and sisters. Your mother is here with your brother." "Okay." Seeing her young mistress leaving, Xiaolu quickly scrambled to his feet to follow. Hence, Yingbao, followed by a deer and flanked by Danny, Ernie, and Yuanbao, went off to play outside. There wasn't much to do outside. The weather had turned cold, even the tree leaves had completely fallen, and the bugs and ants were nowhere to be seen. It would probably snow soon. But the children didn't see it this way. They could happily run around all day using bamboo sticks as horses. Not long after they left the house, the village children came rushing over, all jabbering about Xiaolu, some even reached out to touch him. Yingbao reminded them, "Don't touch his backside carelessly. Be careful not to be kicked by Xiaolu." Nowadays, Xiaolu had grown quite tall and was far larger than an ordinary deer, exhibiting a robust physique with strong hooves. He looked as if he was almost a small pony. If saddled and bridled up, the kids could even ride it like a horse. Indeed, Bao had this thought in mind, but getting a custom saddle would cost quite a few silver coins, so she had put off the idea for now. The children pulled their hands back and chattered around Yu with envy written all over their faces. This deer had become a celebrity in the village, having been seen and touched by nearly all the children. Even those from Shichen village often came by, just for a glimpse of Yu. Bao had seen the two daughters from Chen Chomping's home too, but felt no ripples in her heart. The happenings of her previous life were left where they belonged, in the past. The now her did not want any connections with them. Are you Bao? A pallid village woman stood not far away, her eyes fixed on Bao. Bao didn't even need to turn around to figure out who was speaking. It was her birth mother, Han Junyang, who had been watching for who knows how long. Bao was startled, but she quickly calmed down, pretended not to hear anything, and turned to Brother Bao. Brother Bao, can I go over to your place to read? She had already learned the 3-character classic from Bao, and was currently reading through the 1,000-character classic and 100 family surnames. She believed that soon, she'd be able to write freely and openly. Sure. Bao agreed without hesitation. If his little cousin went to read, then Yu would be his to take care of. As she was about to leave, the woman took a few steps forward to block her, repeating, "You're Bao, aren't you? Do you know who your real parents are?" Rolling her eyes, Bao responded, "My parents are Jiang Sanlang and Su Chunyang. Who are you? Why are you blocking my way?" Wiping imaginary tears from her eyes, Han Junyang protested emotionally, "No. They're not your real parents." Before she could finish, Bao grabbed Bao's hand and ran toward her uncle's house, shouting "Bad woman" over her shoulder. Stunned, Han Junyang stood in place. With one breath, Bao dashed into her uncle's house. On seeing that cousins and Yu had followed her, she quickly asked them to close the gate to the courtyard. The house was empty at this time. Her grandparents, uncle, and aunt had gone to help out at their own homes. Her other cousins weren't home either. Bao, clutching her chest and panting, was somewhat dazed. How could this woman dare to come over so early? It wasn't like this in her past life. She remembered the first time the Han family visited was when she was over 4 years old. Bao lowered her head to look at the birthmark on her wrist. She hadn't managed to remove the birthmark yet. She couldn't let that woman bring everything out into the open. Why did Bao call her that? Danny asked, perplexed. She recognized the woman. She seemed to be from Shichen village. Being older by a few years, Danny understood what the woman was implying. She glared at her sister. That woman dared to try and sow discord. Of course, she's a bad woman. Everyone in the family knew that Bao was not their uncle's biological child, but they didn't care as long as her uncle and his wife treated her as their own. That woman bringing up such a topic was trying to drive a wedge between Bao and her adopted parents. Oh. Danny finally understood. At 6 years old, she was still a little confused, but she knew that the family needed to stick together. She nodded forcefully, "Then let's go tell Uncle, and we'll deal with that bad woman." Danny had the same thought in mind. She turned to Bao, "Should we go find Uncle?" Bao shook her head, "Not for now." Today was her little brother's 1-month celebration, and there were so many guests at home. She couldn't give Han Junyang the chance to reveal everything in front of everyone. She surmised that Han Junyang wouldn't have the nerve to say it herself, so she came looking for her instead, trying to find a breakthrough with the children. What if she's still waiting outside? Though sensible, Danny was only 9 years old, and hadn't encountered such a situation before, so she was a little uneasy. Peeking through the crack in the door, Bao quietly said, "The bad woman isn't outside." Turning to his little cousin, he patted his chest, "I'll go out and check if she's gone." "All right, you go, but don't talk to her or call for anyone," Bao instructed. "Sure, I'll just take a quick look from afar." Bao walked out, leading Yu by the hand. Chapter 16, Chapter 16, Chapter 16, Regret. Chapter 16, Chapter 16, Regret. Han Junyang stood for a long time, looking at the bustling Jiang family home, her heart filled with jealousy and resentment. Why weren't the twin boys hers? Why did the newcomer have such good luck, adopting a girl and even having it bring him twin boys? How was she worse than that woman who had been sterile for 10 years? The more Han Junyang thought about it, the more upset she became, the more indignant she felt, almost shedding tears on the spot. People passing by whispered amongst themselves, and some even called out loud, "Isn't this Chin's second auntie? Are you here to give congratulations? Why don't you go in?" The Han family stiffened, stuttered, I am just passing by." After saying that, she turned and left, walking quickly away, as if a ghost were chasing her from behind. Halfway, she encountered several village women, talking about Jiang family's gossip. "Today, I finally saw Jiang's twins. Oh my, they're so handsome. Fair and chubby, their small arms are like lotus roots. Indeed, the woman can finally hold her head high. Didn't conceive for 10 years, didn't expect to conceive twins when she finally did. And they're both sons, wow. That's why you really can't judge a book by its cover, the old clam can also produce pearls. Those who said Jiang would have no descendants will have to bite their tongues now." Exactly. Hey, it's also Jiang's good luck to adopt a fairy child. If it weren't for Yingbao, would she have been able to conceive? Humph. Well, that's not necessarily true. How is it not? Even the divine witch Song said that Yingbao is a lucky doll. Whoever adopted her would be blessed. Really, did old lady Song really say that? Indeed, she even said that the day Jiang adopted Yingbao, there was a divine light shining upon his house. Really? Did you witness it? I didn't see it myself, but is not the deer that follows Yingbao around all day evidence enough? In our area, which other child can command such a big deer? Oh my, now that you mention it, Yingbao really does seem like a fairy child. So fair and pretty, just like a painting, not like the children in our village. They say she could speak before she was 1, even recognize some characters now. Who in our village has a girl who can do that? Indeed. Oh, I wonder who Yingbao's biological parents are. To abandon such a gifted child, I wonder if they'll regret it later. They'll definitely regret it. They'd be green with envy. Regret is useless now. True. A woman lowered her voice, "Hey, do you think Yingbao could be from Chen Erlang's family in West Village?" Another woman slapped her thigh, "Now that you mention it, the timing of Chen's wife giving birth and finding Yingbao does line up. Oh my, the Chen family have had 3 or 4 girls in a row, they really could have abandoned a child. Karma is really catching up to them." As they were enthusiastically chatting, they suddenly noticed someone standing not far away. It was Han from Chen Erlang in West Village. They quickly nudged each other, winked, and stopped talking. After a moment of silence, a woman said, "I'm off, I still need to go to Zhang's house for the 1-month celebration. I can't chat with you anymore." "You better hurry, my husband's already there, he's probably seated by now." "I have to get back too, haven't cooked the meal at home yet." The crowd dispersed, leaving Han alone from a distance. This time, Han Juniang truly began to cry. She hurried home, flopped onto her bed and sobbed for a long time. Chen Chongping entered the room and upon seeing his wife like this, couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Wiping her tears, Han looked at her husband and said, "Erlang, can we take the child back?" Chen Chongping furrowed his brow, "What child?" Just the one you abandoned." Han family wiped her eyes. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Chen Chongping's face reddened in an instant, he angrily said, "That child is already dead. Do you understand? Dead." Having said that, he stormed off with a sweep of his sleeve. Han family was stunned for a while, her face growing paler and paler, her fingers clenching the front of her dress, grief swelling in her heart. Actually, whether they had that child was not important at all, the main thing was she was unsure in her heart whether she could ever give birth to a son in the future. What would happen if she could never give birth to a son? Even though she had the support of her younger sister and brother-in-law in the county town, it was hard to ensure that her husband would not abandon her in the future. If her husband did really leave her, what would she do? Where could she seek refuge? Her parents had long passed away, she had no brothers in her maiden family. Although her only younger sister could provide some help, she could not help her for the rest of her life, could she? The more Han Juniang thought about it, the more frightened she was, and the more anxious she became. At this moment, her 7-year-old daughter peeked her head in from behind the curtain, timidly saying, "Mom, Grandma wants you to go and fetch water, there is no water left in the pot at home." Upon hearing this, Han family was instantly infuriated. She jumped up, picked up a bamboo stick and began hitting her daughter on the head while yelling, "Worthless wretch! Now, even you are bossing around your mother. Can't you fetch the water yourself? What's the use of having you? What's the use of having you?" The older daughter was crying out in pain, covering her head with her hands, but she didn't dare to dodge. Because she knew that the more she dodged, the more furiously her mother would beat her. "What in the world are you doing?" The mother-in-law, Feng family from Chen, rushed over, pointing at Han family and shouting, "What, you even beat your child for just a water-fetching task? Who are you trying to show your temper to? Who were you just cursing at now? Rebelling against you, huh?" Han family ignored her mother-in-law and continued to beat her daughter. "Worthless creature. Why don't you just die? I should just kill you. Second son. Second son. Where the hell have you died off to?" Furious, Chen Feng family stamped her feet. After shouting for her second son for a long time and seeing that he did not show up, she swore, "Shameless jerk. Daring to curse the mother-in-law behind her back now. Second son. You unfilial son. Look at what you have spoiled your wife into." Seeing that her mother-in-law was genuinely angry and fearful of further enraging her husband, Han family threw down her bamboo pole, hung her head, and moved towards the stove. She picked up 2 buckets and a carrying pole and left the house. The moment Chen Feng family saw that her daughter-in-law was giving in, she too stopped cursing. She turned her head to glance at her granddaughter who was huddled on the ground, sobbing miserably, and furrowed her brow. "Are you a fool? When your mom beats you, you don't know to run farther away. Utterly useless. Everyone is such a worry." She huffily rushed back to her room, only to see her old man leisurely playing with the purple clay teapot their eldest son brought back. Indignant, she said, "You sure know how to take it easy. Didn't you hear the ruckus outside? The matters concerning our children and grandchildren should be left to them." Old Chin Chomping was completely unconcerned. "The more we interfere, the more complaints we'll receive." Easier said than done. Chen Feng family was still seething with anger. Han family beats the child every day until they're wailing, tarnishing our family's reputation. Humph. She can't even give birth to a son but dares to be so domineering. Nobody has a temper as bad as her. You deal with her. Old Chin Chomping gave his wife a side glance. "The more you meddle, the more you'll worry. Be careful not to overdo it and harm your health. We're all old bones now. How many years can we live? Why bother worrying so much? I would rather not worry." Chen Feng family sat down with a huff by the Kong bed, "But if she keeps acting like this, she will ruin second son's luck." Old Chin Chomping kept quiet, his heart full of dissatisfaction towards his second daughter-in-law. Indeed, for the past few years, his second son had always been down on his luck, failing the county examination several times. He wasn't sure if it was because of his daughter-in-law's misfortune. Not able to give birth to a male child was one thing. After all, his own Chen family didn't lack grandsons, but this woman's temper was growing bigger and bigger, and her entire person was gloomy. It was as if someone owed her 1,000 coins, was very ominous to look at. The old couple both fell silent. After a good while, Chen Feng family softly asked, "Old man, do you think that child the Jiang family from East Village picked up as second sons?" Old Chin Chomping gave his wife a sideway glance. "What does it matter whether it is or not? The child was already abandoned. It was just a girl. Why would they even bring it up?" Chen Feng family pondered for a while, then said in a hushed tone, "Haven't you heard? The whole village is spreading that Jiang family's third son picked up a lucky child. They're even saying that she's the reincarnation of the fairy child under Guanyin. Don't listen to such nonsense." Old Chin Chomping certainly did not believe this kind of rumor. Where on earth is there a fairy child? It's just a young girl. If she was really that miraculous, his Jiang family wouldn't be so poor. So what if they're poor? Chen Feng family shot a sideways glance at her husband. That's because they were ruined by his daughter-in-law years ago. Any money they made was spent at the medicine shop. Chapter 17, Chapter 17, Chapter 17, Toolman Chapter 17, Chapter 17, Toolman, just go and see for yourself, even if nothing else, that deer alone of the Jiang family is worth a fortune. Chen family's Feng side, I heard rumors last time claiming that they refused to sell their deer even when they were offered 20 taels. 20 taels, my God, that's what our eldest son makes in a year. Old Chin scoffed, however much it is, it's just a one-time deal. Can it compare with the steady income of our eldest son? Feng rolled her eyes. Then do you know who is raising the deer? Without waiting for her husband to answer, she continued, it's that little girl. She pastures it every day without needing to lead it by a leash. The deer follows her everywhere without ever straying from her side. Everyone in the village knows this, right? Even Master from the clan school said that the child has a special aura. Old Chin frowned. What good does that do? Even if the child has a special aura, she was raised by the Jiang family. You actually want to shamelessly ask the Jiangs for her back? TCH. If they really did so, the spit from the villagers could literally drown them. They abandoned a perfectly good child in the past. Now that they see how good she has turned out, they want her back. As the Chin family, they can't stoop so low or lose face like that. Feng was taken aback and mumbled, I was just saying, who claimed to go ask for her back. Besides, we're not even sure if she's our second son's child. With that said, she angrily stood up, lifted the curtain and left the room. Meanwhile, at the Jiang's, the celebration party for the newborn's first month didn't end until late. Jiang Sanlang felt exhausted but overjoyed as he lay side by side with his wife on the platform bed. Their two sons were sleeping soundly between them. Who would have guessed that I, Jiang Sanlang, would have both a son and a daughter one day? Jiang Sanlang said, just 2 years ago, I was considering adopting another child. His wife Chunyang stroked their son's head, smiling, we owe all our luck to Yingbao. Haven't you heard the gossip? They say our Yingbao is a little fairy bestowed to us from heaven. Don't spout nonsense, Jiang Sanlang frowned, let the outsiders gossip all they want, but we shouldn't blindly join in. I know, Chunyang said softly, I'm just sharing it with you, no strangers here to hear. Jiang Sanlang cupped his hands behind his head and sighed deeply, alas, our daughter's reputation is drawing way too much attention. I fear we might be unable to protect her one day. Chunyang poked him lightly, expressing her annoyance with his remark, that's nonsense. Yingbao is our eldest daughter, the real sister of Xiaojie and Xiaowu. Her name is already recorded in our family registry, what do you mean we couldn't protect her? Although the Jiang family were recent arrivals, they also had their own clan. The vital base of the Jiang family lay in the Jiang family village located 20 miles away. Even to this day, Jiang Sanlang's uncle still lived in the Jiang family village. Likewise, people came from there to celebrate the newborn's first month. Jiang Sanlang turned towards his wife, grabbing her hand, I'm speaking the truth. You don't know, Chen Chomping's mother even came to our house today. She stood at our doorstep for a long time, watching with her sharp eyes. It was quite unnerving. Why did she come? Chunyang immediately became displeased. They weren't on friendly terms with Chen Chomping's family, and they hadn't invited them over for their son's first-month celebration either. Jiang Sanlang sneered, that woman actually told Yingbao that we aren't her real parents. What? Chunyang was infuriated, did she really say that? Yes, Danny told me. Yingbao called her a bad woman and hid at my older brother's house. That damned woman. Chunyang was both angry and resentful, what else did she say to Yingbao? She wanted to say more, but our Yingbao didn't give her the chance. Jiang Sanlang chuckled, our daughter is smart. Chunyang fell silent, feeling heartbroken. This woman had the audacity to harass a 1-year-old child without consulting the child's parents. What on earth was she plotting? She has absolutely no shame. Sanlang, what should we do? Chunyang pulled on her husband's arm, worriedly asking, that woman might come again. What about Yingbao? She was truly worried that Yingbao would leave this family. Jiang Sanlang snorted, let her come. We're not afraid of her. His fist wouldn't hesitate to punch a woman. Since that woman was not playing fair, he had nothing to worry about. Even if it escalated to the Qin family clan leader, he still had the upper hand. Meanwhile, in the western room, Yingbao was crouched on the ground, taking a half-burnt, thin piece of charcoal from the fireplace. It was still warm to the touch. If she could heat this piece of charcoal until it glowed red, she could use it to burn off the birthmark on her wrist. Yingbao took a deep breath, pulled out a tinderbox from the fireplace, and lit the piece of charcoal. When the charcoal was almost fully burned, she blew out the flame. She stuffed a folded cloth into her mouth, closed her eyes, and, gathering all her resolve, pressed her wrist onto the red-hot charcoal. SSS. The smell of charred flesh assaulted her senses. Whimper, whimper, Ingbao's entire body trembled, and the pain brought her to tears. Looking at her wrist, the birthmark area was now a charred mess. She whimpered softly, discarded the chewed-up cloth, and with one hand, picked up the prepared 5 tribute mushroom, swallowed it, and smeared its juice over her burnt flesh. A cooling sensation coursed through her, easing the wretched pain temporarily, yet it was still unbearable. Wiping away her tears, Ingbao stepped onto a stool, climbed onto the Kong bed stove, and buried herself in the quilt, trying to force herself to fall asleep. Shouldn't she feel no pain once she's asleep? Oh, it hurts so badly. After what felt like forever, the pain in her wrist started to fade, finally allowing Ingbao to drift into slumber. In her dream, she found herself standing in thick fog once more, with that book laid out in front of her again. Ingbao felt a sense of bewilderment. This dream was persistently cryptic. She hadn't thought or pondered about the story during her day, yet she found herself dreaming about the narrative once again. And it was the same narrative. Regardless, she was still anxious to find out what was to come next. She approached the book, opened the pages skillfully, and resumed reading where she had left off. The story continued with Chen Tian taking her 3 cousins from her aunt's family out to play, only to lose one of a pair of golden washing hairpins. Originally a pair, the precious hairpins were gifted to her by a noble gentleman on the day Chen Tian had her hair coiffed up for the first time, so losing one left her morosely regretful. A few days went by, and surprisingly, the lost hairpin was found beneath the pillow of her 3rd cousin, Chen Ying. This sent the entire family into uproar. Her aunt was mortified, and slapped her 3rd daughter over a dozen times, forcing her to kneel and admit her wrongdoing and apologize to her cousin. Unexpectedly, Chen Ying stubbornly refused to submit. She glared at her mother with a fierce look in her eyes, defiantly refusing to apologize. Chen Tian, kind-hearted as she was, saw Chen Ying's face in painful disfigurement, with blood oozing from her nose and lips, and couldn't bear it. She offered to give the hairpin to her obstinate 3rd cousin. However, their aunt turned down the offer, chastised her daughter once again, and locked her in an abandoned chicken coop in her yard, refusing to feed her for 3 days. Afterward, the incident seemed to have been swept under the rug and forgotten. A few more days later, the most beautiful dress in Chen Tian's wardrobe was slashed. This time, both her 2nd cousin and a younger cousin claimed that it was Chen Ying, who was just recently released, that was responsible. Even her usually reticent eldest cousin agreed to their accusation. But just like before, Chen Ying adamantly rejected the accusation. She even attacked her elder sister and younger brother, leaving 2 bloody scratches on the face of Chen Zhao. At this point, everyone concluded that Chen Ying was malicious and insolent, uncivilized, and simply impossible to educate. Even the usually placid Mrs. Han started to disdain this persistent niece of hers. In the end, the defiant cousin was taken away by the aunt to the countryside. As she read up to this point, the book changed into paper butterflies and vanished. So according to the book, I am evil and beyond reproach. Not even a supporting character, merely a tool used to emphasize the protagonist's beauty, kindness, and purity. No one would be happy to be portrayed in such a manner. Similarly, Ingbao was furious and completely lost interest in the book. What rubbish was written in it? That's not how it happened at all. Firstly, it was Chen Zhao, her 2nd sister, who found the hairpin. Ingbao had seen her secretly trying it on. However, because this matter had nothing to do with herself, Ingbao chose to ignore it. Perhaps her older sister didn't think so. For whatever reason, she put the hairpin under the younger sister's pillow, then went to Chen Tian and falsely incriminated Chen Ying. Admittedly, Chen Zhao's preemptive attack had been successful. No matter how much Ingbao tried to refute the accusations, no one would believe her. Chen Ying was slapped by her mother, Mrs. Han, a dozen times in front of everyone. Later, she was whipped with bamboo till her body was covered in wounds and was locked in a chicken coop for 3 days without food. When they let her out 3 days later, right after she finished a bowl of porridge, she was accused by Chen Zhao and their younger brother of slashing Chen Tian's dress. She argued vehemently with her 2nd elder sister and younger brother on the spot. While Chen Zhao was eloquent and prudent with her words, how could a 4-year-old be so cautious? He slipped up the moment he started to speak. Second sister said that if I rip the dress, she will give me candies, and that it was you who did it. Everyone hates you so you can't deny. Humph. It was you, third sister. Those were the exact words of the 4-year-old. Yet no one cared about these details. All that mattered was that she was the one they could blame. The result was that everyone began accusing Ying Bao. They said she had become wicked and ruthless from living with the Jiang family and could not be reformed. Later, Aunt Han suggested to her own sister, Mrs. Chen, that they send Ying Bao to a family renowned for training dancers and voice actresses for the wealthy upper class so that she could learn some manners. Chapter 18, Chapter 18, Chapter 18, 5 Tripod Mushrooms _L. Chapter 18, Chapter 18, 5 Tripod Mushrooms _L. Ying Bao stayed there for 4 or 5 years, enduring daily whippings and being forced to learn acrobatics and song and dance routines, learning how to charm and please people. It was in that place that she learned to read and understand scripts from an elder sister. It wasn't until she was 14 that her biological father, Chen Chongping, passed the scholar examination. The Han family feared that her shameful past as a slave would be discovered, so they redeemed her. After all, Chen Chongping was now a man of distinction. The imperial court valued family ties and filial piety. If someone were to report that he had sold his daughter into slavery, he would be barred from taking the official examination, and even if he had passed, his results might be revoked. In severe cases, his scholar status could even be stripped away. That was the truth, not what was written in the book, that she was sent to the countryside. Haha, it's not worth reading such a book filled with nonsense, describing a deer as a horse. The next day, when she woke up, Ying Bao checked her wrist. The charred area had begun to heal and didn't hurt much anymore. Indeed, the 5 ding herbs are a treasure of nature. She was both surprised and pleased. Judging by this rate of recovery, in a few days, the wound should be scabbed over. What she was unsure about was whether the birthmark had been removed. Upon thinking, Ying Bao took out a large batch of 5 ding herbs, chewed them for a while, and swallowed them. They tasted fresh and slightly sweet as soon as they entered her mouth. She couldn't describe the taste, but it wasn't unpleasant. She may have eaten too many this time, as she only felt a warm stream flowing through her entire body, making her feel cozy and comfortable. Her mind became clear in an instant, and her body filled with vigor. She stretched her legs, joyfully dressed herself, wrapped her wrist, opened the door to her room, only to find that it had snowed outside. The pristine snow had blanketed the courtyard up to the thickness of half a knee. Ying Bao rubbed her face, steps on the snow with her cotton shoes, but she felt unusually cheerful. Yu Yu was calling her from the newly built straw shed, and the hens were clucking away non-stop. Ying Bao ran over, dipping one foot deeply in the snow and raising the other, placing some straw and a few beautiful green soybean sprouts in Yu Yu's stone trough. The straw was left over from the rice harvest in their own paddy field, while the bean sprouts were produced in the cave dwelling. Yu Yu didn't mind the fewer green plants and slowly chewed down the straw and bean sprouts. Ying Bao then scattered some barnyard millet and a handful of shepherd's purse for the chickens before she picked up 4 eggs from the chicken nest and put them into the egg basket. Her father couldn't bear to kill these 5 chickens after all and bought new ones to boost the body of his wife. Jiang Erlang built another straw shed in the courtyard for the chickens to perch and made a cozy shed for Yu Yu as well. The kitchen is finally a lot cleaner without the daily chore of cleaning up chicken droppings and that stench of chicken feces. Bao Bao, why are you up so early? Her father, Jiang Erlang, was carrying a bucket, heading out of the courtyard. Seeing his daughter already busy in the chicken pen, he said, "It's cold outside. Don't catch a chill. Come back inside. I'll cook in a while." "All right." Ying Bao clapped her hands together and then hopped back to the east room to check on her brothers. The 2 little ones were already awake, and Chunyang was feeding them. Ying Bao peered over the edge of the kong, a traditional Chinese heated bed, at the brother in her mother's arms, wishing they would quickly grow up so she could take them out to play. Chunyang gently said to her daughter, "Come up here on the kong, it's cold on the ground." "All right." Ying Bao quickly climbed up onto the kong and sat next to her mother. Now her daily task was to take care of her brothers, freeing up more time for her mother to rest. The family would only improve as long as her mother got a good rest and regained her strength. Ying Bao thought about the 5 ding herbs in the cave dwelling and hesitated whether to give her mother some. But her brothers were still breastfeeding, and she couldn't guarantee that the herb wouldn't affect the baby's normal development. She decided to wait until her brothers were weaned and then feed it to her mother. As for her father, Jiang Erlang, he was young and strong and didn't need any tonics at all. Jiang Sanlang came in from outside, bringing in the chill of winter. He placed the clean chamber pot in the small partition, and chafing his palms together, he said, "Spring Maiden, elder brother and second brother are planning to go hare hunting on South Mountain once the snow stops. Should I go with them?" While he was asking for her opinion orally, his eyes were steadfastly fixed on his wife, full of anticipation. Spring Maiden sounded a bit annoyed. "The snow is still falling, isn't it? We'll talk about it once it stops." Jiang Sanlang gave a sly chuckle. "Understood. I'll go prepare the meal now. What would you and our daughter like to eat?" Most of yesterday's leftovers were given to the neighbors who had helped out. Only a little was left at home, just as much as a family would need for a day. "Make whatever you want. I'm a bit low on milk. How about some fish soup? And boil an egg for Ingbao." Spring Maiden looked down at her two sons and slightly furrowed her brows. These two little bugs ate so much that her breast milk supply was insufficient. "All right, we'll have fish soup noodles for breakfast, and I'll also boil eggs for you and our daughter." Jiang Sanlang leaned over to look at his son and then turned to leave the room. Ingbao blinked her eyes, climbed down from the Kong bed, and followed him out. When they reached the kitchen, Ingbao volunteered to sit at the back of the stove to help stoke the fire. She asked, "Dad, is it that our house is out of fish?" After looking around for a while, Jiang Sanlang indeed found no fish at home. Scratching his head in vexation, he said, "Yes, we're out of fish. How about making chicken soup noodles for your mother instead?" While saying this, he began scooping out flour to knead, preparing to roll out noodles. Chicken soup was readily available, which still had a bit of chicken meat left. It should be enough for his wife and daughter for one meal. "Dad, can we go fishing by the river after we eat?" Ingbao grabbed a handful of dough and rolled it in her hands while blinking expectantly. There were fish in winter too. She had once seen people cut through the ice on frozen lakes in the north to fish. "Sure, we'll go borrow a fishing net from your uncle later." Jiang Sanlang sighed, "But I doubt we'll catch anything. It was very cold outside with the snow falling, and the river should be freezing over. All the fish would probably have sunk to the bottom." Ingbao asserted, "How would we know if we don't give it a try?" She had food pellets for royal deer, which deer and chickens would fight over to eat. Perhaps the fish would like them too. Jiang Sanlang nodded, "Aha, my daughter is right. How would we know if we don't give it a try?" With a freezing day and snowfall, there was no way to buy fish in town. His wife was waiting for fish to help boost her milk supply, and their sons were close to going hungry. They had no choice but to brainstorm solutions. After they'd had breakfast and tidied up, Jiang Sanlang was about to step out when his little daughter followed him. "Dad, take me with you." Jiang Sanlang shook his head, "No. It's cold outside. And the riverside is slippery. What if you fall into the river?" "I want to go." Ingbao was determined. "Maybe I'm better at fishing than you, Dad." Jiang Sanlang guffawed and ruffled his daughter's hair. "You little imp. Fine. I'll take you with me. But you must behave there and not wander around." "Ah!" Ingbao joyfully sprinted over to her father, who then picked her up and put her in the carrying basket. Jiang Sanlang glanced outside and seeing that the snow was still falling, turned back inside to pick up a colorful tiger head hat and put it on his daughter. He also put on a traditional broad bamboo hat himself. With the carrying basket on his back and having borrowed a fishing net from his elder brother's house, Jiang Sanlang headed to the riverside. However, unbeknownst to him, he was followed by 3 lads. One was his elder brother Jiang Dalong, one was his second brother Jiang Erlang, and the third one was Jiang Dalong's second son, Jiang Quan. Jiang Yuanbao also wanted to follow them, but after being beaten up by his mother a few times, he ran back into the house crying. Arriving at the river's edge, they saw a fog of snow over the river's surface and a thin layer of ice along the water's edge. "It's going to be tough," Jiang Debo suggested. "The fish must be sunk to the river's bottom. We can only fish if we row to the middle of the river." Jiang Sanlang and Jiang Erlang also thought the same. Yet, Ingbao wanted to give it a shot. Clinging onto the carrying basket, she called out, "Dad, put me down." Jian Sanlang, left with no choice, put his daughter down. Just as Bao was about to run towards the water, Jiang Sanlang grabbed her. No running around. Just stay on the riverbank and watch. Bao could only tug at the fishing net her father was holding in his hand. Plead, then Dad, you take me to the river's edge. I have bait. Let's just give it a try. She had already prepared the bait. How could she be content without giving it a try? Chapter 19, Chapter 19, Chapter 19, Big Fish _L. Chapter 19, Chapter 19, Big Fish _L. Jiang Sanlang hesitated for a while, but eventually gave in to his daughter and reluctantly took her to the riverbank. Bao crouched down and put the small ball of dough mixed with Wuding Qi into the water from her hand. What did you throw in? Jiang Sanlang asked curiously. Bait. Bao mysteriously replied, the fish might like it. Jiang Sanlang laughed, from what I see, it's just dough. Fish naturally like it of course, but... Before he could finish his sentence, he heard his elder brother Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang shouting from the riverside simultaneously, look. Look. Sanlang, quickly look. Some fish are coming. Jiang Sanlang looked up and indeed, 2 dark ridges in the water were heading their way. Hey, watch out, everyone. Jiang Sanlang promptly picked up his little girl and handed her over to his nephew who had also come. Quick, take your little sister up to the bank. He picked up his fishing net and realized that it was too small to catch such large fish. Elder brother, second brother, we can't catch them. Jiang Sanlang was so anxious that he was jumping around. Both elder brothers rapidly came running over, but were equally helpless. Half of the 2 large fish emerged from the water. They swam to the shallow waters, ate the bait, circled around a few times, and swam away. Oh. Jiang Sanlang couldn't help but sigh. The fish were too big, and the water was too cold. He couldn't risk going into the water, it could be lethal. If it was summer, we wouldn't have let them get away. Jiang Dalong sighed as well, it's almost 9 feet long from head to tail, oh God. The last time he had seen such a big fish was in Jianglin County. It was a fish that a fisherman had caught from the big river and dragged to the county town using a flatbed cart. The slices of fish meat, which looked like tofu, were sold piece by piece. A steward from a wealthy family spent 2 taels of silver to buy 2 baskets of fish meat, saying that this type of fish was the best for making sliced raw fish. Bao was also stunned. She didn't expect that her little ball of Wuding Qi would attract such enormous creatures. This was too absurd. After gawking on the riverside for a while, Jiang Sanlang hesitantly asked his daughter in a low voice, Bao, do you have any more bait? Bao searched through her pockets and pulled out 3 dough balls the size of birds' eggs. I have 3 more. Jiang Sanlang hesitated for a moment, then asked, can you give them to Daddy? Bao nodded and put the fish bait into her dad's large, sturdy palms. Here, for fishing. Jiang Sanlang smiled heartily and ruffled his daughter's tiger head hat. You go home first. I need to discuss something with your uncles before coming back. Okay. Knowing the magic of Wuding Qi, Bao was content and ready to go home to see her little brother. Dad, be careful not to fall into the river. Daddy knows. Jiang Sanlang sent his nephew, Jiang Quan, to take his daughter home, while he and his elder brothers planned before they went back to look for tools to catch the fish. Just a fishing net would not be effective. The big fish was violent and could very well drag both them and their net into the river. In that case, they would have to catch them manually using iron hooks and ropes. They would attach 2 long ropes to an iron hook and fork, and tie one end to a big tree. They would use the hook to snag the fish, while assisting with the fork. As long as the hook did not come off, they had no worries about not being able to catch the big fish. Leaving aside how Jiang Sanlang will catch the fish, let's talk about Bao. Upon returning home, she saw that Sister Danny and Sister Ernie were there watching her mother spin flax threads. Her 2 younger brothers were still sleeping. So, Bao didn't disturb them and pulled up a stool to watch beside her mother. Chun Yang looked up at her 3 daughters. Bao, take your cousins to sit on the Kong, heated brick bed. It's too cold. Beware of getting frostbite on your feet. Okay. Actually, Bao felt warm, but her 2 little cousins appeared to be shivering from the cold. So, the 3 sisters sat on the warm Kong, covered their legs with a quilt, Danny was embroidering with a handkerchief in hand, and Ernie was also sewing a piece of rag cloth. Country girls mature early. They started learning to spin and embroider at the age of 5 or 6, and by the age of 9 or 10, they must have learned how to weave and tailor. Ingbao also wanted to learn more, so she took a piece of scrap cloth from her mother's sewing basket to practice embroidery. It was noon before they knew it. As her mother prepared to go to the kitchen, she suddenly heard a commotion outside. Rushing outside to see, a large crowd of villagers were carrying a large fish towards Uncle Zhang's house. "My goodness, such a big fish, it hasn't turned into a spirit, has it?" Aunt Wang exclaimed in front of her house. Turning her head towards Chunyang, she said, "Chunyang, Sanlang and the others caught a big fish in the river, you should go and see." Chunyang was also taken aback and quickly ran to Uncle's house. Lo and behold, there was another fish in the courtyard there. Even clan leader Chen Fu's family had come over, circling the large fish and marveling at it. Old Man Jiang couldn't stop grinning and loudly said, "Brother Chen, stay and have dinner here today, let's enjoy some fresh sushi." Clan leader Chen nodded with a smile. "I'd be honored to obligate. Let us both have a drink." He turned his head and ordered his grandson, "Go home and fetch that jug of green ant wine." The grandson agreed and ran off quickly. And so, the Jiang family started hosting guests again in the afternoon, inviting the clan chief, village headmaster, and a few old villagers. Zhou family and several sisters-in-law were cooking in the kitchen. They prepared dishes of soybean stewed fish, charcoal grilled fish, fresh sushi, and fish fin stew. A few large bowls were brought to the table, and everyone ate until their mouths were shining with oil. After eating, everyone took a chunk of square-cut fish meat home. After tidying up the table, Old Man Jiang sat down and discussed with his 3 sons how to distribute the remaining fish. "We must give some to the people who have helped, leave some for our family to eat, and sell the rest in the town," he said. Jiang Sanlang said, "We don't need to sell it at a too high price, slightly higher than the usual price of fish is fine, let's set it at 9 coins a pound." 9 coins a pound, isn't that expensive? Jiang Dalong hesitated, "What if we can't sell it? The usual price of fish is 5 or 6 coins a pound, and the highest price during the festival did not exceed 8 coins, because in the town, pork is only 12 coins, and mutton is the most expensive, 17 or 18 coins a pound. If we can't sell it, we will take it back and eat it during the festival." Jiang Sanlang said, "We haven't seen this fish for decades. Selling it for 9 coins a pound is actually a loss." Jiang Erlang said, "Listen to Sanlang, let's sell it for 9 coins a pound. Big fishes are rare, and the meat is so good, scarcity is what makes something valuable. I don't believe we can't sell it." "All right, it conveniently falls on the market day tomorrow, you guys transported to the town early in the morning." Old Man Jiang took the final call. There was no more talking for the rest of the night, and the next day when the snow had stopped, the 3 brothers borrowed a cart and took the remaining big fish to the town. The snow made it difficult to travel, and by the time their cart reached the town, it was already late, and there weren't many people at the market. Perhaps the cold weather and slippery roads due to the heavy snow made many people stay home. Finding a suitable location, they parked the cart, and Jiang Sanlang started calling out, "Come, come, come. Century-old big fish, a rare delicacy indeed. Eating it gives you longevity and wards off all illness." Seeing his younger brother's flamboyance, Jiang Dalong felt embarrassed, poked him and said, "Third brother, stop shouting." But Jiang Erlang just laughed and said, "Big brother, you don't understand. How can you do business without shouting? Look, isn't someone coming now?" Jiang Dalong looked, and sure enough, a few people were heading towards them. "How much for this fish?" The man who asked the question was about 40, wearing a fox fur hat, a thick cotton robe, and deer-skin boots. He looked wealthy. Jiang Sanlang responded, 10 coins a pound. Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang, they immediately recoiled and turned away, pretending not to know their younger brother. 10 coins per pound. That's almost the price of pork. The man in the fox fur hat touched the fish and clucked his tongue, "That's a bit expensive." Hearing this, Jiang Dalong felt more embarrassed and his head was almost sinking into his chest. Jiang Sanlang just laughed and said, "Sir, this fish is a century-old big fish. As they say, anything transformed after a century is rare and hard to come by. If you still think 10 coins a pound is expensive, then 10-year-old ginseng would be as cheap as cabbage. The man in the fox fur hat looked at him and laughed. I appreciate your novel justification. Give me 20 pounds. Chapter 20, Chapter 20, Chapter 20, Making Money _L. Chapter 20, Chapter 20, Making Money _L. Jiang Sanlang quickly picked up the deboning knife, drew it across the fish, and asked, "Where do you want a piece from?" The dorsal flesh is delicate and can be made into fish slices, while the belly is fatty and can be braised or grilled, you see. The fox fur hat member gestured around the fish's body. Just here, cut 2 more pieces of the fins, a bit deeper, more sticky flesh. Apparently, the flesh under the fish's fins tastes the most delicious, particularly the large fish's fin meat. When stewed or boiled, it is delightful. His master especially had a taste for it. All right then. With a swift movement, Jiang Sanlang chopped off a large chunk of fish and cut away 2 pieces of the fin. He tied them together with a thin hemp rope and hung them on a hook to be weighed. It weighs a total of 21 catties, about 25.2 kilograms, and 3 taels. I'll discount the weight of the hemp rope and call it 21 catties for you. It's 210 coins. The man in the fox fur hat took 4 strings of coins from the coin pouch around his waist and added another 10 copper coins before handing it to Jiang Sanlang. Jiang Sanlang took the coins and counted them. 4 strings, each containing 50 coins, added to 10 odd pieces, just the right amount of 210 coins. Thank you for shopping. With the fish handed over to the customer in both hands, Jiang Sanlang had a big grin on his face as he waved off his first customer. After making the first successful sale, things went smoothly, and the few spectators who had been lingering around also each purchased large portions of fish before leaving. The crowd at the market was getting bigger and bigger. Most of the fish on Jiang Brothers' cart were already sold. Then, the local tax collector, Xiang Ji, arrived. He inspected the goods in the cart and demanded 20 coins as the market tax. Jiang Dalong was displeased and intended to argue the amount, but his younger brother intervened. Jiang Sanlang handed over 20 coins to Xiang Ji, sliced another chunk of meat from the fish's head and handed over. This is our first time setting up a stall in the town. This is a small token of our gratitude. Xiang Ji eyed him for a moment, chuckled, accepted the fish meat and asked, "Which village are you from? Are you coming back next time?" "From Qin village. If we manage to catch more fish, we will surely come back." Jiang Sanlang also laughed. "All right then." Xiang Ji remarked, "Next time you come, set up your stall right here. I'll consider you as regular traders, and you'll only need to pay 10 coins each time." Jiang Sanlang thanked him and said, "We are indebted to you." After Xiang Ji left, Jiang Dalong complained, "The stalls around us only have to pay 3 to 5 coins. The ones who sell vegetables and eggs only need to pay 1 or 2 coins. Why did he ask us for 20 coins? Why did you even give it to him? Even dragons don't step on local snakes. Our village is far from town, and we are not familiar with these people. If we want to sell fish smoothly in the future, we have to keep a low profile temporarily." Jiang Sanlang explained, "Besides, we don't have the time to quarrel with him. Sanlang is right. We might come back next time. It's a good thing that Xiang Ji has arranged a fixed place for us now." Jiang Dalong was silent for a moment before asking, "Will we come again? Can we catch such a big fish again?" Jiang Sanlang scratched his head without uttering a word. "Whether we can catch a big fish is uncertain, but regular fish should be fine. We still have 2 of our little girls' baits left, which should suffice for 2 more times." By noon, the last bits of fish were sold out. Even the fish heads and bones have been sold at a low price. The 3 brothers pushed their empty cart home. As soon as they reached their house, the 3 brothers hurried inside to count the money. With a swoosh sound, the money bag was poured out, and a pile of copper coins made people dizzy. They counted the money together and quickly reached a conclusion. 4,513 coins. 1 fish sold for over 4,500 coins. Jiang Dalong was ecstatic. This amount was nearly close to his family's annual income. Jiang Dalong worked on the land, and the total annual yield was only 15 to 16 coins. After deducting land taxes, household taxes, and miscellaneous expenses, not to mention the cost of seeds, only remained around 5 to 6 coins. Their living conditions were very tight. Luckily, he and his brothers had some hunting skills. Every winter they would go hunting to make up for the household expenses. Otherwise, they would not have made ends meet. He didn't expect to be so lucky this year. In the summer, they made more than 2 coins with Sanlang, and today, they earned more than 4 coins. Combined, they had 7 coins in total. Although this money would eventually be divided among the 3 of them, each receiving a part, it would remain in Jiang's family. Jiang Dalong couldn't help but laugh out loud, looking expectantly at Sanlang and asking, "Sanlang, are we going to go fishing again tomorrow?" Jiang Sanlang scratched his head. "Why don't we wait a bit longer? In about 10 days, there will be a big gathering. We can go fishing prior to the gathering, that way we can sell the fish fresh the next day." On the 1st and 15th of every lunar month, the country folks would come out in droves for the temple fair. Everyone had to make the most of it, especially as they could sell the fish at a higher price. Furthermore, in just a short span of time, it would be the Lunar New Year. Before the festival, the market would be more bustling as everybody needed to prepare the New Year goods and were also more willing to spend. Yes. Sanlang makes sense. Jiang Erlang kept nodding his head. In another month, it'll be the Lunar New Year. If we fish before the festival and sell it at the market, we might fetch a good price. Jiang Dalong was slightly disappointed, but he agreed with his brothers. That's better. We have already caught the big catfish from the river. There won't be another one for a while. Let's just wait for some time. After the 3 brothers came to a consensus, they started to divide the money. Over 4 coins in total were at first discounted with the odd change, and then, the net 4 coins were divided into 3 portions. Each family received 1,334 coins. The remaining 511 coins were given as a dutiful share to their parents, 200 coins. The other 311 coins were requested by Jiang Dalong to be given to Yingbao. It was because he observed that Yingbao had put something in the river that attracted those 2 big fish. Are we good with this division? As the eldest brother, Jiang Dalong spoke with an authoritative tone. Jiang Erlang quickly nodded. I agree. The big fish came for Yingbao. Without my grandniece, we would not have been able to catch such big fish. Jiang Sanlang laughed and said, thanks to my 2 elder brothers. I'll accept it on behalf of Yingbao for now, and hand it to her when we get home. However, there's a matter that I'd like to inform my brothers in advance. Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang were both slightly taken aback. Sanlang, just say it. Your brothers are all ears. Jiang Sanlang coughed once, and said, I speak straight and simply, please don't take it personally. But this matter relates to my daughter, so I had to speak up first. Well, we are all family here, no need for pretense. But outside, please remember not to mention that the big fish were attracted to Yingbao. She is still young, and I worry that people might start spreading unsavory rumors. Understood. Jiang Dalong patted Sanlang's shoulder. You are right to remind us. We forgot about it. Your brothers will be cautious in the future. Jiang Erlang also assured, I will not mention it outside. Sanlang, rest assured. Jiang Sanlang bowed to his brothers, and said with a laugh, thank you for your consideration, brothers. It's not about being considerate or not. You have reminded us. Let me tell my son right away, not to talk nonsense when he goes out. Back home with the money, Jiang Sanlang immediately told his wife and daughter about everything and handed over the money that belonged to Yingbao. Yingbao happily received it and placed it into the small wooden box in her bed. She finally earned her first batch of money. Though not much, being less than 2 years old, she was already a little tycoon in the village. Sister Danny was almost 10 years old. Her family had already started looking for a good family for her to marry into, but she had not a single coin in her possession. Compared to her cousins, she was simply rolling in riches. Yup, after a while, she'll definitely ask father to take her to the market to buy colored silk and fabric flowers as hair accessories for her older cousins. Chapter 21, Chapter 21, Chapter 21, Fishing Again _L. Chapter 21, Chapter 21, Fishing Again _L. There's an old saying, frost before cold, snow after cold. The freezing weather was not enough to deter the villagers from their dreams of wealth. Lately, the area around the Chuanha River had become exceptionally lively. Ever since the Jiang brothers caught 2 big fish in the river, many villagers had been lingering by the river with their tridents and nets, hoping they, too, would experience such good luck. However, after waiting for over 10 days, they hadn't even seen a single small shrimp. Sigh, why do you think? The Jiang brothers are so lucky. A villager remained puzzled. First they encountered a herd of deer and caught 3 to bring back, and now they've caught sturgeon. Such big ones that would usually appear only in major rivers. How did they get into our modest Chuanha River? Well, isn't it because the Jiangs have their little fairy child? It's only natural they'd have good luck, another villager responded sarcastically. Oh, you might be right. Another villager chimed in, bringing up old gossip. Look at Mrs. Jiang, who hadn't been pregnant in 10 years yet. After picking up Yingbao, she became pregnant within a few months, and with twins no less. And now they are becoming richer and richer. It is tough for us to be skeptical about it. Exactly, you can't deny that, a villager nodded thoughtfully. The Jiang family seems to have struck it rich. When will the fairy child bless us as well? We are from the same village after all. She always releases the deer from our fields. Hey, yes, the fairy child should bless the rest of us too. It's only fair to send blessings to all equally. They can't keep all the blessings in one family. Exactly. Oh, you lot need to cut it out. An annoyed villager interjected, does the fairy child eat your food? Drink your water? Wear your clothes? Humph. Stop daydreaming. Stirred by these words, someone immediately grasped the new idea, smacking his head. Ah. That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. Ha ha ha, I'll head home. You guys carry on chatting. With that, he bolted off. Everyone looked at each other in confusion, having no idea what had gotten into him. So, one day when Yingbao took Yu out, they came across 2 6- or 7-year-old children, who each gave her a boiled egg and then ran off. Yingbao. The eggs in her hand were still warm, as if they had just been boiled. A few days later, when Yingbao and Danny went out to play, they hadn't gone far when they were surrounded by 3 or 4 children. Without saying a word, each of them gave her a piece of food: pancakes, boiled eggs, walnuts. One child even gave her 2 soft, red persimmons, but being overly nervous, he accidentally squeezed the persimmons, spilling juice all over Yingbao's hands and staining the front of her new cotton jacket. The 7- or 8-year-old boy immediately started crying when he realized his mistake and apologized. Little Yingbao, please don't be angry, one didn't mean to. Yingbao was speechless and curiously asked, I'm not angry, but could you tell me why you're giving me these things? She didn't consider herself to be universally popular, and even with Yu, the ultimate weapon, by her side, she found it hard to believe that all the children in the village would be giving her gifts, especially precious items like eggs and pancakes. You must understand that in the village, less than 3 households were well off, only 4 or 5 households had enough to eat, the rest were half-starved and struggled to survive. How could they possibly be giving the most valuable things in their homes to a stranger? My parents told me to, the little boy faltered. They said, if you eat our food, then we'll be blessed. Yingbao. She roughly understood their intentions now. When she got home, Yingbao put the food on the table, washed her hands, wiped her dress with a cloth, then sat down and sighed. In her previous life, she hadn't experienced this situation and she really didn't know how to handle it. She didn't know who sent these gifts, as she couldn't distinguish which child belonged to which family. Well, she would wait till her dad came back to discuss it. At this time, Jiang Erlang was going to another place along the river with his 2 brothers, trying to find the best spot for fishing. With too many villagers gathered on the banks of the Chuanha in Qin village, it was impossible for them to make a move. If people found out they had something that attracted big fish, they would surely strip them alive. Is this place all right, Erlang? Jiang Erlang asked. The area they chose was several miles away from the village, with bumpy roads and many stones, making it difficult to walk. The only advantage was the broad river surface, gentle water flow and a likely shelter for fish. Jiang Erlang stroked his beardless chin. This place might not be good for luring fish. His thoughts remained focused on the big fish they caught last time, assuming they could catch another sturgeon this time too. We've brought big baskets, we should be able to carry the fish back, Ling Erlang replied. All right then, Jiang Erlang said. His main focus was on supporting his little brother for everything. The three brothers came down to the water, and Jiang Erlang took out a small dough wrapped in oil paper from his bosom. Jiang Erlang stretched his neck to look at it, but couldn't see anything special about it. Was it really this thing that lured the fish last time? He found it hard to believe. Sort of. Jiang Erlang crumbled the dough into fragments and only pinched a little bit to spread on the water surface. They waited for a while, but the river remained quiet. Jiang Erlang's stinginess upset Jiang Erlang. Just this bit, will it really work? Isn't it too little? Let's wait and see, Jiang Erlang replied, leaning on his hand. After waiting for a while longer, the river started to stir. Jiang Erlang and Erlang held their breath, their eyes wide open, watching the ripples on the water intently. They're really coming, Jiang Erlang said, his face flushed with excitement. Quick, Erlang, get the fishing fork. Jiang Erlang glanced at the ripples and said, the fish this time aren't too big. We need to catch them alive for a good price. Okay. Let's use the big net then. After their previous fishing experience, Jiang Erlang had specially bought materials from the town and made a big net, the kind that could catch several dozens pounds of fish at once. It finally came in handy this time. Several greenish fish silhouettes bobbed up and down, soon reaching the fish bait and lapped up the fragments. Jiang Erlang and his brothers made their move, each aiming at one, and swung their big nets toward the bottom where the big fish were. Ha, we got them. Erlang, quick, come and help, I can't hold on anymore. Jiang Erlang first helped Erlang pull the fish up, and then helped Jiang Erlang hold on tightly to the net to avoid the thrashing big fish getting loose. In no time at all, the three brothers were drenched in sweat but secured two big fish on the line. They looked at each other and burst into laughter. This fish is good, over 5 feet long, perfect for the wealthy households to use for ancestral rites, Jiang Erlang stated while laughing. It's a shame that two got away. Jiang Erlang responded nonchalantly, it doesn't matter if a few got away, let's secure these two first and aim to catch more. The fish for sacrifices had to be alive, so he put these two fish into a nearby puddle to ensure they wouldn't suffocate. Having secured the fish, the three brothers, though drenched to the bone, collected their nets and returned to the river to continue waiting. Jiang Erlang once again took a pinch of the fragments and dispersed them onto the water surface. They continued this activity for a whole day and caught 8 more 5 feet long fish as well as a few smaller ones. As the day grew late, the three brothers carried all their fish and headed home. Chapter 22, Selling Fish 1. Chapter 22, Selling Fish 1. By the time they got home, it was pitch dark. The three brothers had icicles on their clothes, shivering from the cold. Elder brother Jiang couldn't stop sneezing and rubbing his nose. Upon seeing this, Mrs. Zhou hurriedly pulled her husband to the back of the stove to undress and warm up. Old man Jiang and his wife were scrambling about. They first had their grandson fetch clothes, then instructed their granddaughter to heat up water to wash the faces and hands of the eldest, second, and third sons, and change their clothes. Aya, how did you all get so wet? Ah, your hair is filled with ice. The old lady Jiang was frantic. She quickly searched for dried avodia fruit to brew hot water for the children to dispel their coldness. After warming himself by the fire, third brother Jiang recovered quickly. With his 13-year-old nephew, they temporarily stored the fish in the large vat at home and ate 2 bowls of steaming donuts before he went home. At this moment, Chun Yang was lying on the Kong bed with the children, dozing off. Seeing her husband enter, she quickly got up. Why are you so late? Have you eaten? Let me warm up some food for you. Chun Yang quietly got off the bed and prepared to cater to her husband. No need, I've already eaten at my eldest brother's home. While sitting on the Kong bed removing his shoes, Jiang Sanlang got into the warm quilt and sighed, it's so warm. Returning to the Kong bed with a towel, Chun Yang began to dry her husband's hair while whispering, why is your hair wet? Did you fall into the river? Not at all, Jiang Sanlang chuckled softly, we had a great catch today, caught several big fish, each of them 4 feet long. Chun Yang was surprised. 4 feet? How heavy is that? Usually, the largest fish we see by the river are 3 to 4 jin, not more than 2 to 3 feet. Why do we keep encountering big fish this year? Jiang Sanlang rested his hands behind his head and casually said, "Our stretch of the Chuanha River is deep and there aren't many proper fishermen. We don't usually get the chance to see such fish." Turning to his wife, he continued, "Tomorrow morning, I will go to the market. Let me know if we need anything at home and I will bring it back. New Year's Day is coming soon, we need to get the New Year's provisions. Ing Bao is growing up too, we need to get her some new clothes. All right, I'll think about what we need to buy." The next day, before the crack of dawn, Jiang Sanlang got up, fetched a pole, and went to fetch water. After filling the vat with water, he hastily left the house and went to his elder brother's house. Seeing Uncle Sanlang coming, Mrs. Zhou hurriedly invited him to have breakfast, saying, "Your elder brother seems to be sick today, he may not be able to make it to the market." Sick? Jiang Sanlang was surprised. He asked, "Should we call a doctor?" "We'll have to Shang fetch one later." Mrs. Zhou wore a worried expression. "Your elder brother had a fever last night, I'm a little concerned." "Jiang Sanlang, how about I fetch the doctor from town? The village one isn't that good." There was a man in their village who had some rudimentary medical skills, but he was only capable of dealing with minor ailments. Anything more serious was beyond his abilities. This wasn't only an issue of his medical skills, but also because he lacked high-quality medicinal herbs. "Then I will trouble you, Sanlang," said Mrs. Zhou with slight relief. After the breakfast, when his second brother was still not around, Jiang Sanlang sent his nephew, Jiang Quan, to his house to check on him. It turned out that his second brother was also sick with a fever. Jiang Sanlang had no choice but to borrow a donkey cart from Chen Suanjing. Accompanied by his younger nephew, Quan, he went to the market to sell fish and to fetch a doctor. The town was particularly crowded today, as it was the end of the year and every household was out purchasing New Year goods. Jiang Sanlang had dray-weighed one of the large fish. It was around 7 catties. If sold by the catty, at 10 coins each, the whole fish could be sold for over 700 coins. However, Jiang Sanlang told his nephew that live fish would be sold by the unit, 900 coins each, dead fish would be sold by the catty, 10 coins per catty. These prices were pretty steep, but Jiang Sanlang was confident that he would be able to sell his fish. As expected, many people gathered around to watch. There were many inquirers, but few buyers, as everyone thought the prices were too high. Thereafter came a wealthy man who bought 2 large live fish at once. The other customers hurriedly followed suit. Originally, there were only 8 big fish, 5 of which were still alive, but 2 were quickly sold, leaving only 3. Jiang Quan, Ing Bao's nephew, was smiling brightly, weighing fish for the customers while saying to his uncle Ing Bao, "Uncle, our fish sell really well." Ing Bao laughed and turned his gaze towards the crowd. He spotted Xiang Ji again, the local official, and another man who seemed to be another tax collector. With a sigh in his heart, Ing Bao quickly picked up 2 medium-sized live fishes and put them in the donkey cart. The imperial court imposed many types of taxes, like land tax, household tax, grain tax, market tax, fishing tax, and vehicle tax, amongst others. Presently, Ing Bao had to deal with 3 of these. He had to pay the market tax, but whether he had to pay the fishing and vehicle taxes was debatable. The cart wasn't his, perhaps Chen Suanjing had already paid the tax for it. However, these tax collectors might insist that since he used it, he would have to pay again and won't accept any argument. As for the fishing tax, though he brought fish to sell at the market, if matters got strict, he'd have to pay. So, Chen village is selling fish again. The middle-aged Xiang Ji came over expressionlessly, pointed at the remaining fish on the ground and said, "Since you're in business now, you need to pay the tax." Ing Bao, with a hurried smile, handed over 10 coins to Xiang Ji and handed out one of the fish he had stashed in the cart. "The festival is coming up, and we don't have much to offer in our house. I've saved this especially for you to taste." Xiang Ji took it without hesitation and nodded towards the side. "This is my colleague responsible for the fishing tax." Quick on the uptake, Ing Bao immediately took out another fish and handed it to the men, just a token of respect. "We, the humble people, also make a meager living by selling some fish at the end of the year." The fishing taxman, grinning from ear to ear, accepted it. I understand. But it won't be a precedent." Having successfully sent the 2 officials on their way, Ing Bao finally exhaled in relief. At this moment, there were still 2 big live fish left for sale, while most of the dead fish were sold. Leaving his nephew to mind the stall, he went to the town to call for a doctor from the only medical shop present. Upon reaching the shop, he found it full of people waiting to see the doctor. The only doctor in the place was rushed off his feet and downright refused to make a house call. Though Ing Bao pleaded for quite some time, the old man still flatly refused, asking the attendant to escort him out. With no other choice, Ing Bao asked for 2 prescriptions for cold and fever, picked them up and headed back. Upon returning to his cart, he saw the men in the fox fur hat haggling with Jiang Quan. "I'm an old customer of your family. How can you refuse to give me 100 coins off the price for these 2 fish?" Jiang Quan pleaded with a sense of wrong. "No one haggles like you do. You want to reduce the price by 100 coins at once. I just can't sell it to you like that." The man in the fox fur hat raised an eyebrow and, noticing Ing Bao, pointed at him to ask his opinion. Ing Bao laughed. 100 coins off is too much. The fish aren't just mine, you saw last time that we are 3 partners in this." Seeing the man in the fox fur hat frown, Ing Bao quickly added, "How about this? I have one more fish here. It's fresh and weighs about 4 pounds. I'll give it to you. How does that sound?" The man in the fox fur hat became somewhat cheerful and reluctantly nodded, "All right." After paying, the man signaled a porter to come over and carry the fish. Holding up the 4-pound fish, he said to Ing Bao, "I specifically came from the county. I wanted to see if there were any white sturgeon like last time. My master likes fresh fish sashimi. If you catch any again, send them to the county. I will cover the transportation costs." Ing Bao bowed and laughed. "That would be great. In the future, any that are caught will definitely be sent to the county. May I ask where your residence is?" The man in the fox fur hat gave an address and left with the porter. Chapter 23, Chapter 23, Chapter 23, Chaos and Panic. Chapter 23, Chapter 23, Chaos and Panic. The fish were sold out, and Uncle Jiang Sanlang and his nephew packed their things and went home. When they reached the old house, Jiang Sanlang fed his donkey with a bundle of straw, took a 3-pound green fish out of the jar and gave it to his nephew, and asked him to pay for the donkey cart. He also handed the purchased herbs to his sister-in-law. "The doctor at the town center can't leave, and doesn't want to make a house call, so I collected 2 doses of typhoid medicine. Give one to my second brother and the other one for you to stew for my eldest brother." Zhou family nodded, took the bag of medicine and quickly went to the kitchen to find the pot to stew the medicine. Jiang Sanlang entered his eldest brother's room and saw him lying on the bed with a wet cloth on his forehead, whining. Seeing his third brother coming in, he struggled to sit up and asked, "How much did you sell?" "I haven't checked yet." Jiang Sanlang put the bag of coins on the table. "I'll call my second brother to come, we can count it together." The so-called clear accounts make for good brothers. Jiang Sanlang could not possibly count these coins on his own. Even if his eldest and second brother were both sick, they would still have to be present to watch. Before long, Jiang Erlang arrived, coughing all the way. Jiang Debang was already off the bed, and the 3 brothers huddled together to count the money. "In total, we have 7,134 coins. Oh, haha, we're rich, cough cough." Jiang Erlang couldn't stop laughing and coughing. Jiang Sanlang also laughed, claiming triumphantly, "If we hadn't lost those 3 big fish, we could have earned more." Jiang Debang was very happy, rubbing his hands. He said, "Why don't we do like before, give our parents 300 coins, and also give Ing Bao 300 coins. The rest of it, we 3 brothers can split evenly, how about that?" Jiang Erlang had no objections. He didn't go to sell the fish this time. He knew his contribution was less, so he thought this was a fair distribution. Jiang Sanlang naturally hoped to give more to his daughter. After all, the bait was hers, and without it, they wouldn't have been able to catch anything, let alone big fish, in such cold weather. But he held back from speaking first, and refrained from letting them know more. "Well, 300 is 300 then. Ing Bao is still young, so she can't hold on to too much money. After all, he would save up for her dowry as her father. Giving her this money is just to let her have a little more freedom, saving up a bit of her private money. After all, most children in the village, after they are more than 10 years old, don't even have a single coin at hand, just like his second nephew. So, each of the 3 brothers got 2,178 coins, which is almost half a year's income for them. Getting the money, Jiang Debang immediately felt significantly better. Erlang also didn't let this weigh on him, and with the heavy coins in his embrace, he went back home in light steps. When he got home, he gave all the copper coins in his arms to his wife Ling family, smiling and saying, "Today Sanlang sold 7,000 coins in town, cough cough, each of us got more than 2,000 coins, you keep them safe. We can buy a couple of pieces of cloth in town later, cough cough. You and the kids can have new clothes for the new year." Ling family received the copper coins and counted them, then frowned. "Erlang, that's not right. If Sanlang sold 7,000 coins, why did we only get 2,178 coins?" Jiang Erlang gave a cough, and then said, 300 coins were given to pay respects to our parents, and another 300 split for Yingbao. The rest naturally is divided up this way." Ling family looked displeased. "It's right to pay respects to our parents, but why Yingbao? What did she do to deserve this? She received as much as our parents." Jiang Erlang frowned, thinking to tell her about the big fish being lured by Yingbao, and that the fishhook was also given by Yingbao. But remembering his younger brother's insinuations, he suddenly couldn't explain it to his wife, so he said, "This is how the eldest brother divided it, cough cough, also Sanlang is making money with us brothers, so what's wrong with giving Yingbao a little?" Ling family was even more upset when she heard this. "What do you mean, Sanlang is making money with you? You are brothers, isn't this supposed to be how it works? Plus, if you guys didn't help out, could Sanlang catch so many fish by himself? This is clearly eldest brother in collusion with Sanlang, taking advantage of our family. The portion given to the in-laws will eventually be left to the eldest son after they die, won't it? Regarding the portion given to Yingbao, could a toddler manage that much money? In the end, isn't it just going to end up with third brother?" Jiang Erlang became angry upon hearing this. "What nonsense are you talking about? Collusion. If this word gets out, how can we brothers get along? Cough cough cough. What nonsense are you talking?" Ling family's eyes reddened. "They are bullying us. It was the same last time, we let it slide when they shortchanged us by 200 to 300 coins, but they can't just keep pushing us around." As she spoke, she began to berate her clueless 3-year-old son. "Your parents have always favored your eldest and third brothers, considering you, the second son, as surplus. Now, even your brothers have started to oppress you." Jiang Erlang furrowed his brows. "Do you really need to say all this in front of the child? How my parents and brothers behave is none of your business." Ling family saw that her husband was not on her side, which made her even angrier. She began to curse. "You're just a coward, being bullied yet you only show your temper at home. Have the guts to show it outside. Marrying you, a man of no use, has really brought bad luck upon me for 8 lifetimes." Jiang Erlang couldn't win the argument and couldn't explain either, so furious, he raised his hand as if ready to hit her. "Go ahead, hit me," howled Ling family, clutching her son and bowing her head, rushing toward her husband. "Just kill me then, I can't live like this anymore. I'd rather die." The 3-year-old Huzi, frightened by the scene, started to cry out, struggling to get out of his mother's arms. Jiang Erlang, seething with anger, took his son and shouted at his wife. "Enough. If you don't want to live with me, then leave." Ling family, who was sobbing into her hands, shuddered at his words, and threw herself onto the Kong bed, continuing to cry out loud. "Fine, fine, fine, keep throwing your tantrums." Cough, cough, cough. Jiang Erlang, knowing that he was in the wrong just now, carried his son out of the room and lay down in the west room. His head was spinning from anger, and he felt that his illness had grown worse. Let's not discuss the chaos at Jiang Erlang's household. Speaking of Jiang Sanlang, when he got home, he handed the money to his wife. Remembering that he had promised to buy some New Year goods but had forgotten, he slapped his forehead and apologized to Chunyang. "I got too caught up and forgot. Ah, how about I go to town in a few days and buy them?" Chunyang laughed. "If you forgot, you forgot." Today, Yingbao was still saying she wanted to go to town. "Next time you go, take her with you." "All right." Jiang Sanlang looked around and not seeing his daughter, asked, "Where is Yingbao?" "She went out to play with Danny and Ernie." Chunyang picked up her elder son and started to feed him. They had been eating a lot of fish these past few days, so she had plenty of milk. Both babies had been eat, sleep, and repeat. They had gotten chubby, their faces so round that they had developed double chins, making them difficult to hold. Jiang Sanlang watched his son with a loving smile on his face, and poked the baby's face a couple of times, chuckling gleefully. The baby, who was poked, let go of the nipple and turned his head to look, as if silently reproaching him. Chunyang swatted away her husband's hand, giving him a glare. Xiaowu is still waiting to be fed, don't bother him, let Xiaojia finish eating quickly. Jiang Sanlang picked up the little baby who was lying next to him, waving his tiny hand, and started to play with him, making all sorts of noises. Chunyang, while nursing the child, chatted with her husband. It's really strange these past few days, lots of village children have been insisting on giving gifts to Yingbao, they get upset if she doesn't accept them. I don't know what their intentions are. Jiang Sanlang turned his head and asked, what are they giving? Eggs, white flour cakes, and all kinds of fine food. Chunyang said. Jiang Sanlang laughed out loud, who are they? How generous of them. Eggs and white flour cakes are rare items. Regular kids in their village might not get to taste them even once in a few months. Chunyang, looking annoyed, said, who knows which child they are, I guess the children who always follow Yingbao around have given gifts. That's nothing. Jiang Sanlang laughed and shook his head, not minding, we can just prepare some snacks ourselves and let Yingbao give them back. After all, children trading gifts during their playtime is very normal. Moreover, the deer their daughter was raising was considered a priceless treasure by the children in the village, so giving some food was just a way of trying to ingratiate themselves. Chapter 24, Chapter 24, Chapter 24, Tu-Bo got sick _L. Chapter 24, Chapter 24, Tu-Bo got sick _L. Deep in the winter, at the tail end of the year, the weather was particularly chilly. Yingbao had run a dozen or so laps in the threshing field with Yu before returning home with Danny and her sister. This was her daily exercise routine, which also served to train the deer to be more docile and obedient, so that one day it could serve as her mount. Ling family's third son, who was cooking in the kitchen, stuck his head out when he saw his daughter come home. Your uncles have given you 300 coins, Dad put them on your bed table. Hurry up and put them away. Oh. Yingbao put Yu in the hay shed, filled the stone trough with fodder, and then ran off to the west room. 300 copper coins were threaded on a fine linen rope, 50 coins per string, and when piled together they formed a small pile that was pleasing to the eye. As soon as she had enough for 2 strings of coins, she would go to town and order a leather saddle for Yu so she could ride it further. Overjoyed, Yingbao gathered up the copper coins and added them to her previous stash, then ran into the east room to check on her little brother. Their mother was sitting on the bed, spinning thread, while the 2 infant boys lay next to her, fast asleep. Bao Bao, are you cold? Her spring mother asked. No, Yingbao ate a handful of wudingzi every day before going out, her body was warm and she wasn't afraid of the cold at all. Spring mother smiled at her daughter's response, mother thinks you've grown taller. Really? Yingbao ran over to the wall, standing feet together, hands comparing her height to the previous mark. Wow, I really have grown taller. She squinted with laughter. Growing tall was great, the taller she was, the stronger she would become, and the less likely anyone would dare to bully her. No wonder your cotton jacket sleeves look a bit short, my Bao Bao is growing up so fast. Spring mother put down her handwork and stepped forward, let me see. Should I let out the sleeves a bit? Yingbao immediately shook her head, no need to let them out, they're perfect as they are. The sleeves were a bit long before and always got in the way when she was doing things, but now they were just right. After saying this, she spun around and ran out of the room, I'm going to help Dad with the fire. Upon arriving at the kitchen, her father had already finished cooking the meal. Fish soup, pork fat cakes, rice porridge, a bowl of pickles, 2 boiled eggs. Such a dinner was quite lavish by village standards. Yingbao helped her father carry the food to the east room, placing it on the heated bed table. After the family of 3 finished dinner, their father went off to wash the pots, rinse the dishes, and heat the water for washing. He did not stop until it was dark. Yingbao, lying on the heated bed, began to slowly peel off the black scab on her wrist. The burn on her wrist had completely healed. The skin was smooth, with only a faint pink hue remaining. She believed that in no time at all, this pinkness would return to its normal color. The original plum blossom birthmark was gone, but a small red mole the size of a needle tip remained. Ing Bao furrowed her brow, not entirely satisfied. The last time she burned so deeply, the birthmark was not completely removed. Would she have to burn it again? Remembering the pain of that day, she shrugged her shoulders. Forget it, let it be for now. After all, there were still several years to go. Moreover, she had not seen the Han family recently, let alone her two daughters who seemed to have vanished and not come into her sight again. However, Ing Bao could not let her guard down. She had to keep her wrist wrapped up, and, yes, she should borrow a brush from her little cousin. Better yet, she should obtain some cinnabar clay to paint a picture of a turtle on her wrist, just in case. Because even if she didn't have a birthmark on her wrist, the Han family would still target her. What that woman wanted was never a daughter, but a son. She blew out the oil lamp and entered the cave. The wheat and rice in the cave had ripened. The heavy ears were full, which was a beautiful sight. Ing Bao picked up a sickle and decided to start harvesting the rice. 2 hours later, only a quarter of the rice had been harvested, but Ing Bao's palm was scraped with 2 big blisters that hurt so much she gnashed her teeth. Gasping for breath, Ing Bao, with teary eyes, scraped a bit of wudingzi from the rock wall, crushed it, and rubbed it on the blisters on her palm before going to bed. When she woke up the next day, the blisters on her palm had disappeared. Ing Bao was very pleased. She eagerly went back to the cave, ate a handful of wudingzi, and continued cutting for a while, charging on with her replenished energy. Alas, she was still physically insufficient. With such a large field of rice, wheat, and soybeans, when would she be able to collect them all? She got dressed, got off the Kong bed, went to the kitchen to fetch water to wash up, and then ran to the chicken coop to collect eggs, before taking Yu outside to frolic about. Third uncle, third uncle. Jiang Quan from uncle's house rushed into the hall in a hurry. Jiang Sanlang poked his head out from the kitchen, "What's up?" Jiang Quan then rushed to the kitchen, huffing and puffing, "Third uncle, you better take a look. Second uncle has a persistent fever and coughed up blood this morning." Jiang Sanlang was startled. He quickly put down the soup spoon in his hand and went outside. "What do you mean he coughed up blood all of a sudden? Didn't he look all right yesterday?" A patient coughing up blood was not a good sign. If his second brother got tuberculosis, then it could be bad news. His son Huzi was only 3 years old, and Danny was only 6. "I don't know." Jiang Quan said, "Yesterday, I heard my second aunt arguing with my second uncle. They didn't cook dinner at their house last night, and Danny and Huzi both ate at our house." Jiang Sanlang frowned, feeling some displeasure in his heart. This second sister-in-law really didn't understand things. His second brother was still sick, yet she didn't even cook. If she didn't cook, then she probably didn't make the medicine either. He wondered if his second brother took his medicine yesterday. Jiang's second brother's house was not far from the two brothers' house, only separated by a few houses. The uncle and nephew hadn't arrived yet, but they could already hear the Ling families crying. Jiang Sanlang furrowed his brow in thought, and asked his nephew, "How is your dad doing?" "My father felt better after taking the medicine yesterday. He's still coughing, but he had 2 big bowls of rice porridge this morning," said Jiang Quan. Jiang Sanlang let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that the medicine he brought back was effective. However, his second brother has always been more physically weak than his older brother. He had overlooked this and assumed that since they had caught a cold together, their symptoms should be similar. Yet to his surprise, his second brother coughed up blood. Jiang Sanlang was frustrated. As he entered the yard, he saw Ling's wife were crying hysterically on the ground while holding Dehuzi. Danny was also teary-eyed, standing beside to them, lost. A few villagers were watching the spectacle, standing outside the fence with their bowls in hand. "Second sister-in-law, it's cold outside, you should go back inside quickly, don't let the child catch a cold," Jiang Sanlang said sternly. Upon seeing Jiang Sanlang, Ling's wife cried even harder. As she cried, she complained about how unfortunate she was to marry a useless man, bringing misery to their children. Jiang Sanlang couldn't stand her nonsensical talk anymore, and entered the house in an irritated huff. He saw that his parents and older sister-in-law, from the Zhou family, were already there. "Sanlang, later on, take your second brother to town to see a doctor," said old man Jiang. "Your older nephew has already gone to borrow a donkey cart." Jiang Sanlang nodded, went to the Kong bed, and tested his second brother's forehead. His temperature was very high, he was burning up with fever. "How are you feeling, second brother?" Jiang Sanlang asked. Jiang Erlang's face was flushed red, and he kept coughing incessantly, looking extremely weak. "My chest hurts, cough, cough, cough. I'm out of strength." Zhou family's wife brought a bowl of porridge over and handed it to the third brother. "Feed your second brother some porridge. He had been hungry all night. How could he have any strength?" "Ah, I am really done with your second sister-in-law." Seeing that things were serious, Jiang Erlang nodded in fear, barely managing to eat half a bowl of rice porridge. Seeing that things were serious, Jiang Erlang nodded in fear, barely managing to eat half a bowl of rice porridge. Shortly afterwards, Jiang Cheng, his oldest nephew, arrived at the door with a donkey cart. Jiang Sanlang picked up his second brother and put him on the cart, wrapping him with a cotton quilt. Jiang Lu came chasing after them and gave a roll of coins to the third son. She said quietly, "Take it, use this money for your second brother's medical treatment." Without declining, Jiang Sanlang took it, put it in his pocket, got on the cart, waved the whip, and set off. Chapter 25, Chapter 25, Chapter 25, Naughty_L. Chapter 25, Chapter 25, Naughty_L. Ing Bao led Yu, watching her father drive away with a frown. In her previous life, her uncle succumbed to lung disease. That year, Huzi was 5, and his sister was 8. After observing the 35-day mourning period at home, her aunt returned to her parents' home, leaving her children with their uncle. She was rumored to have married a widower as his second wife within 2 months. Now, Huzi was only 3, and her uncle was already sick. Was it because of her rebirth that the course of events changed? After all, in her previous life, there were no 5 dingxi mushrooms, no xiaolu, no big fish, and her father had never gone fishing with his brothers. If they had refrained from fishing, her uncle wouldn't have overworked himself in the cold, and he wouldn't be ill now. What should she do? Her uncle was such a gentleman, and just because of her rebirth, was he going to die prematurely? Feeling guilty, Ing Bao returned home sulkily, put Yu into the shed, went back to her cave, and continued to harvest crops. It wasn't until noon that Jiang Erlang returned, washing his hands and face with hot water, and took out the warmed-up food from the steamer, placing it on the table to eat. "How is your second brother?" Chun Yang asked. Jiang Erlang shook his head and sighed, "Not so good." "What did the doctor say?" "The doctor said he has lung disease. He prescribed some medicine for him to take first, and he should be examined again once it's finished." Jiang Erlang sighed, regretfully said, "I shouldn't have let him go fishing with us. He was already weak, and the overwork and cold, it was not surprising he fell ill." Chun Yang comforted him, "If you had forbidden it, would there not be talk? When siblings make money together, if you leave one out, wouldn't people gossip? Besides, you know what his wife is like. Her temperament is the strangest, and it would only create more unrest." Jiang Erlang fell silent, finished his meal in a few bites, wiped his mouth, and lied down on the Kong bed, pondering for a while before saying, "Anyway, my second brother caught a cold fishing with us. Sigh, from now on, my elder brother and I will split the cost of his medicine." This time his second brother went to the doctor. His sister-in-law didn't give a single coin, their mother gave them a coin. Fortunately, they accepted that coin, otherwise, the money she brought would not be enough to pay for the medicine. "How much will our family pay?" Chun Yang, who didn't know the specifics, asked tentatively. Jiang Erlang thought for a moment, and said, "A prescription cost more than 800 coins, and that's not even the best quality. I estimate it to be 2 to 3 coins. A prescription could only last 3 to 5 days, and considering how serious his brother's condition was, it would take at least 7 to 8 prescriptions to heal. 8 prescriptions would cost more than 6 coins. If he and his elder brother split the cost, each family would have to pay more than 3 coins. A single prescription cost that much?" Chun Yang was surprised. Normally, treatments for colds and coughs only cost about 20 or 30 coins per prescription, right? The prescription contains slices of ginseng and a jiao. The doctor said that for my brother's condition, he must slowly be nursed back to health. And ginseng and a jiao are indispensable. Jiang Erlang said dejectedly. After a moment of hesitation, he turned to his wife and said, "Chun Yang, my second brother's condition is severe this time. Elder brother and I can't just sit back and do nothing, so I need you to bear a bit more. I understand. Chunyang lowered her eyes, getting up to open the coin box, then. How much? Jiang Erlang waved his hand. There's no rush, get me a coin when I invite the doctor for a follow-up visit in 3 days. All right, Chunyang agreed, feeling a pain in her heart. Their family had just managed to save a little money, and before they could even get used to it, they had to pay again. Sigh. But what could she do? Her husband's siblings were very close. Seeing his brother severely ill, how could they just stand by and watch him slip away? 2 days later, Jiang Erlang's condition had not improved, in fact, it worsened. Early in the morning, his daughter ran to her uncle's house, crying and begging her grandparents to save her father. Jiang Lu held her granddaughter in her arms and wept, saying to her husband, "Old man, think of a solution. Oh. Erlang is only 30. I'll go check on him." Old man Jiang was also upset, and he stood up to go outside. Jiang Lu wiped her tears and followed him along with their eldest son. At Jiang Erlang's house, Jiang Sanlang was about to feed his second brother medicine when he saw his parents and elder brother walk in. He placed the bowl of medicine on the small table and made room for them. "How are you feeling, Erlang?" Jiang Lu approached and grabbed her second son's hand, choking up as she spoke, "My child, tell me if you're feeling uncomfortable anywhere." At this point, Jiang Erlang's eyes were sunken, his cheeks had become thin and gaunt and he was unable to speak. He could only look at his parents tearfully in silence. "Erlang," Jiang Lu gently stroked her son's face as she wept, "you must take the medicine. Your third brother will go to the town to fetch the doctor. Don't be afraid, you will get better." Jiang Erlang nodded weakly. Seeing his son in such a frail state, old man Jiang couldn't help but sob. He quickly wiped his tears away with his sleeve and patting his son's head, he comforted him, "Erlang, nothing serious. You're just feverish. It'll be fine in a few days, yes." Tears rolled down Jiang Erlang's cheeks as he grunted a low acknowledgement. Watching this mating Bao, who had slipped in unnoticed, feel awful too. She looked at her grandparents and her second uncle, then at her oldest uncle and father with their red-rimmed eyes. She sneaked to the side of the table. While everyone was preoccupied, she quietly added a large amount of 5-dingji juice to the medicine bowl and stirred it with a spoon. Suddenly, she felt a light tap on her head that made her jump. When she looked up, she saw it was her father. "Don't be naughty." Jiang Sanlang saw his daughter meddling with the medicine bowl and assumed she was being mischievous. He pulled her outside, "You should go home soon." Ingbao nodded and seriously said, "Second uncle will get better, Daddy. Make sure he drinks all the medicine, don't let it spill." "Daddy knows." Jiang Sanlang led his daughter out of the room and whispered, "Once you get home, tell your mom that I'm going to town in a bit and ask her to send a coin over." "Okay." Just as Ingbao was about to head home, she heard Ling scolding them from the eastern room. "Keep your fake sympathy. Woo, you are all like rats delivering greetings to the chicken. Woo, my lot in life is so miserable." Ingbao frowned. This second aunt was really unreasonable. In her former life, she did not have many interactions with Ling, so she was oblivious to her nature. While her husband was ill, she did not care for him, and when her third brother-in-law tirelessly fed and cleaned her husband, all she did was spit out venomous words. Ingbao felt rather annoyed by it. She hurried through the gate on her short little legs, where she saw Ernie at the door wiping her tears, and Huzi, at 3 years old, sitting on the ground playing with snow, his hands raw from the cold. Upon seeing Ingbao, Huzi ran up to her, reaching out to pull the twin tails on her tiger hat. Ingbao. She brushed off the kid's hand, ready to give him a slap, then remembered that in her former life, this little guy had protected her and her little brother. She paused, took a clean radish from her pocket and handed it to him. "Here, eat this. It's sweet." Upon receiving the radish, Huzi promptly took a bite, munching on it with its skin sending delightful aroma. He smiled brightly and said, "It's good." Ingbao rubbed her nose and quickly left the courtyard. Back home, she relayed her father's message to her mother and then climbed onto the Kong bed to play with her little brother. Her little brother was pleasant to look at, clean, adorable, and always smiling. Seeing her approach, he wriggled his little legs happily. Her mother, Chunyang, quickly fetched a coin from the money chest and rushed out to send it to her husband. Chapter 26, Chapter 26, Chapter 26, Sending Porridge. Chapter 26, Chapter 26, Sending Porridge. The next day, Jiang Sanlang came back from his second brother's house with a face full of joy, telling his wife, "Last night, the second brother slept deeply, hardly coughing at all. This morning, his fever miraculously subsided." "Really?" "Oh, that's fantastic," Chun Yang said with a mix of surprise and joy. "It seems that the second brother is getting better." "He should be," Jiang Sanlang smiled. "The medicine we got yesterday seemed to work. He got better after just one dose." "But it's so expensive," Jiang Sanlang shook his head with a sigh. "One dose costs more than 1 coin. Chun Yang didn't respond, thinking, that means the coin she spent yesterday was not enough. If it's going to continue like this, they won't have enough for their daily expenses. But not spending is not an option. The situation is enough to give anyone a headache." Ing Bao was also worried. His uncle had a lung disease, which was not easy to treat, so medication couldn't be stopped. He had to complete 3 full courses of the medication. 3 courses would roughly last for 45 days. If a new dose is needed every 5 days, that would total 10 taels of silver. 10 taels. That was equal to 10,000 coins. With the money from her father, grandfather, grandmother, and uncle all combined, they might still not have 10 taels. So, where would the money for the medicine come from? Or, should she feed her uncle with some 5-tripod Ganoderma to help him recover faster? Although she wasn't sure if it could cure his lung disease, her uncle had already significantly improved, which suggested that the 5-tripod Ganoderma should be effective. With that thought, Ing Bao rushed to the west room and instantly entered the cave. 1/5 of the 5-tripod Ganoderma in the crevices of the rock wall was gone, but it seemed like more had grown on the top of the cave. But that place was too high, and no matter how hard Ing Bao tried, she couldn't reach it. Well, she would let it be for now and figure something out once the Ganoderma on the wall was used up. Ing Bao carefully plucked the leaves of the 5-tripod Ganoderma one by one and placed them in a clean pottery bowl. When she had 30 leaves, she stopped. She grabbed a rolling pin and smashed the leaves into a paste. She then added some water from the pond and stirred it until half a bowl of transparent medicine paste was formed. At noon, Jiang Sanlang was boiling medicine in his second brother's yard. Seeing his youngest daughter jumping around, he asked, "Has Bao Bao eaten yet?" "Yes." Ing Bao squatted on the ground, staring at the bubbling medicine pot, and said, "Mother asked you to come back home for lunch." Leng's house wouldn't prepare lunch for Jiang Sanlang, and she was even reluctant to boil medicine for her husband, let alone enter the room where he stayed. She was probably afraid of getting infected, because Dr. Li had said that those who are looking after a patient should cover their mouth and nose with a cloth. Of course, Jiang Sanlang and Jiang Dalong didn't have faith in Leng to prepare the medicine either. After all, this woman was cold-hearted. If she were to steal the ginseng slices and donkey hide gelatin from the medicine, that would be unacceptable, and it wouldn't be the first time she did something like this. A few years ago, when Jiang Erlang was ill, she had picked out the ginseng slices from the herbal packages and, together with money and goods, hidden them under the bed. She was later unintentionally discovered by Jiang Lu. Out of rage, he almost divorced her on the spot. If it wasn't for the sake of Danny, who was young at the time, and the fact that she was already pregnant with another child, and Jiang Erlang's hard defense, Jiang Lu would have definitely sent Leng back to her family that time. It was after this incident that the 3 Jiang brothers decided to split up their households. Ing Bao overheard her parents discussing this incident. "I'll come back home as soon as your uncle finishes drinking this medicine," Jiang Sanlang said, using a cloth to lift the pot lid to take a peek. Seeing that it was about done, he removed the charcoal fire and fetched a large pottery bowl to contain the medicine. The medicine was poured into the bowl, filling it halfway with a dark and bitter concoction. Seeing his youngest daughter staring intently at the bowl of medicine, he didn't want her to make a mess and said, "Bao Bao, you should go back first. I'll be back soon." Ing Bao blinked her eyes. "I'll wait and go with father." Jiang Sanlang was helpless, carrying the bowl of medicine and heading to the west room. He cautioned her, "Then you must behave. Bao Bao will be good. Bao Bao wants to see her second uncle." Ing Bao hopped behind her father into the west room where her uncle was staying. Inside the west room, Danny was standing by the bed, talking to her father with a worried face. The little girl seemed to have grown up all of a sudden as she softly and gently explained to her father why her mother wasn't at home. "Father, Mother took my little brother to my uncle's house. She said my external grandmother wasn't feeling well and will be back soon after checking on her." Half-closed eyes of Jiang Erlang, who's lying on the Kong, couldn't reveal any expression. His hand feebly tightened for a moment and he whispered hoarself, "Got it." Ing Bao was surprised. How could Ling family's Erlang's wife take Huzi to her parental home under such circumstances? Her husband was ill, what was she thinking? No wonder she hadn't seen Huzi, turns out his mother had taken him away. "Brother, it's time for your medicine." Jiang Sanlang placed the medicine bowl on the small table, and turned his head to glare at his little girl, warning her with his eyes not to touch the medicine bowl. He then helped Erlang sit up. Ing Bao. She hadn't done anything yet. Turning her head, she saw Sister Danny looking at her, could not help but scratch her head. "Sister Danny, shall we go to Uncle's house to find Sister Danny?" Ing Bao knew there was no way she could sneak the 5 dingji into the medicine bowl now, so she had to settle for the next best thing, inviting Danny to find Danny. Danny shook her head. "No, I have to take care of Dad. With Mom not home, Dad would have difficulty even if he wanted to drink water. She must stay at home to keep an eye on things." Ing Bao pouted, and walked out of the room sulking. Jiang Sanlang helped his brother to drink the medicine, and helped him lie down again, saying, "Brother, you sleep for a while. And I'll be back soon." Jiang Erlang nodded and closed his eyes. After Jiang Sanlang went out, he saw his daughter looking like a wilted leaf in the sun, and couldn't help but laugh, squatting down and clapping his hands. "Bao Bao, come, back home with Dad." Ing Bao didn't want to go home, but it didn't seem useful for her to stay here either, so she reached out for her dad to hold her, and couldn't help but ask, "Dad, has Uncle eaten yet? Shall we bring him some food? He's already had breakfast." Jiang Sanlang carried his daughter and started walking home. "Your aunt will bring porridge over for lunch, we don't need to deliver." "Oh." Ing Bao was even more disappointed. After reaching home, she saw her dad going into the house for food, and she quickly went towards her uncle's house. As soon as she reached the doorstep of her uncle's house, she saw Yuan Bao holding a stone ball, preparing to kick the ball with a few boys at the threshing ground. Seeing his little cousin coming over, Yuan Bao thought she was here to read books as usual, so he said, "Ing Bao, the books are on the table, go and read them, I'm going to play football." He had been obsessed with football lately, even Yu was out of favor. Ing Bao blinked her eaves, "Where's Sister Danny?" "She's cooking in the kitchen." Saying this, Yuan Bao had already run far away. In the kitchen, Sister Danny was indeed cooking porridge, the sweet smell of rice wafting with the heat. Ing Bao pursed her mouth and smiled, asking, "Sister Danny, are you making porridge?" "Yes." Danny nodded, specifically saying, "It's for Uncle." "Oh." Ing Bao was even more delighted, and hurriedly asked, "Are you going to bring it to Uncle later?" "I will deliver it as soon as it's ready." Danny thought her little cousin wanted some, and quietly said, "I'll save some for you later." Ing Bao shook her head, "No need, I'm full." Pausing for a moment, she added, "Can I help you serve the porridge?" Danny didn't understand why her little cousin wanted to help her serve the porridge, but still nodded, "Okay, but be careful not to spill." "I won't spill." Ing Bao excitedly stood on her tiptoes to see the steaming pot, measured with her hand, and saw that she could not reach the stove at all, so she quickly moved a stool next to the stove. Not long after, the porridge was ready, and Danny took out the fire, fetched a jar, and also got a big bamboo spoon, and opened the pot. A surge of steam carrying the strong fragrance of rice came to face. Ing Bao was afraid that Danny would change her mind, so she quickly snatched the bamboo spoon in her hand and stood on the stool. "Danny." Avoiding Danny's strange look, Ing Bao used the bamboo spoon to scoop the porridge and pour it into the jar. Chapter 27, Chapter 27, Chapter 27, Recovery_L. Chapter 27, Chapter 27, Recovery_L. "Be careful," Danny helplessly supported her younger cousin, trying to prevent her from tipping over the porridge pot. After ladling the porridge, Ing Bao asked Sister Danny to fetch a bowl cover for the pot. Without suspicion, Danny quickly ran to the cupboard to fetch a bowl. Ing Bao took this opportunity to pour half a bowl of wudingzi into the pot, mixing it with the bamboo spoon. "Ing Bao, you better come down quickly, don't fall." Danny was somewhat scared of her little cousin. She quickly ran back, immediately covered the pot with the bowl, picked up the pot by the ropes attached to its ears, and asked, "I'm going to second uncle's house, do you want to come with me?" "Yes." Ing Bao nodded. She wanted to see with her own eyes second uncle finish the porridge. And so, Danny held her younger cousin's hand in one hand, and the pot of porridge in the other, and they went to second uncle's house. "Second uncle, wake up and have some porridge," Ing Bao called out to him when she saw her uncle sleeping with his eyes closed. Jiang Erlang, who had just taken his medicine not long ago, didn't feel like eating and shook his head. "Second uncle is not hungry, doesn't want to eat for now." Seeing him refuse, Ing Bao hurriedly urged, "Second uncle, you'll get better faster if you eat the porridge. Sister Danny worked so hard to make it. If you don't eat it, Sister Danny will be sad." Danny, unfairly blamed. Only now did Jiang Erlang notice his two young nieces standing in front of the Kong, a traditional Chinese heated bed. He gave a small smile and nodded, "All right, Danny, serve me half a bowl." So, Jiang Erlang reluctantly ate half a bowl of porridge, then lay down to sleep again. Seeing her mission accomplished, Ing Bao put her worries aside and took Yu Yu out for a jog. Another day, Ing Bao woke up early and prepared a double yolk egg in a bowl, stirred in some Wudingzi paste and pond water, steamed it in a pot, and then gave it to second uncle to eat. Every day after that, she would deliver a bowl of steamed eggs. Several days flew by. Jiang Erlang's health was gradually improving. He was already able to get off the Kong and move around, but his wife from the Ling family had still not returned. Jiang Sanlang saw that the medicine he had caught last time was almost used up, so he decided to ask the doctor to come over and check on his second brother again for another prescription before the new year. After feeling Jiang Erlang's pulse, the white-haired Dr. Li was somewhat in disbelief. He asked Jiang Erlang to stretch out his other hand and rechecked his pulse. Could he have misdiagnosed last time, and this patient was not suffering from a lung disease? You should know that lung disease is a chronic disease, and to this day, no one has been able to completely cure it. To stay alive, one needs to slowly adjust using rare medicinal ingredients such as ginseng and donkey hide glue, to prolong life. But today, looking at Jiang Erlang's pulse condition, which was calm and steady, neither too big nor too small, although a bit weak on the surface, it was indeed a sign of early recovery from a major illness. That is to say, Jiang Erlang's illness was completely cured. Dr. Li was puzzled. He checked Jiang Erlang's tongue coating again, pulled down his eyelid, and took a stethoscope to listen to Jiang Erlang's chest and back, and asked a few more questions. Jiang Erlang answered them all, saying that he felt a little weak and had no other discomforts. He was not coughing or panting now, his appetite was very good, and he could eat 2 large bowls of porridge in a meal. Dr. Li looked at him with a frown, confirming that the patient in front of him had fully recovered. How could this be possible? Even the Imperial Medical Bureau in the capital city couldn't find a cure for lung disease. How could one recover after only taking a prescription or 2? Dr. Li was temporarily unable to find a solution, so he picked up the prescription he had written and looked at it repeatedly. Yes, it was indeed a prescription for treating lung disease, and a very common one at that. Because the Jiang family had limited silver coins, the ginseng slices and donkey hide glue they used were the cheapest and the quantities were very small. Sanlang, do you still have the medicine you caught last time? Dr. Li was determined to find the cause. After all, he would dream of a method that could make a patient with lung disease completely recover. I still have 1 packet left. Jiang Sanlang brought out the last packet of medicine without understanding why. Dr. Li opened it and carefully identified the medicinal materials in the packet. Yes, it was exactly the same as the one prescribed in the prescription, without any difference. Could the patient have taken other alternative herbal remedies? Dr. Li stroked his beard, continuing to inquire, "Can you tell me, what meals and supplements has Erlang been consuming recently?" He was certain that Jiang Erlang must have used some remarkably effective herbal ingredients. Last time he examined him, Erlang was panting heavily, suffering from fever and profuse sweating, his body emaciated and weak, his pulse slow and sinking, showing signs of stupor and coughing blood. His lungs had rowels, and he was still suffering from a high fever. He was clearly in the terminal stages of his illness and wouldn't have survived for long. But hardly a few days later, Erlang was bouncing around energetically. How astonishing was that? Moreover, it had been diagnosed several years ago that Jiang Erlang had a lung disease, which took half a year of medication to slightly improve. But now, even that old remnant of the disease seemed to have disappeared. His voice was clear, his lungs were healthy, he couldn't have been any better. Jiang Sanlang scratched the back of his head, saying, he didn't eat any supplements, just the usual meals we make at home. Mornings and evenings, he had rice porridge with steamed eggs for breakfast and lunch, he ate some chicken meat, fish, and greens. Steaming his own double-yolked eggs was a family matter which Sanlang didn't want to mention. Dr. Li nodded, I see. Then, lowering his head, he rummaged through his medicine chest for a pen, ink, and paper. He then began to write a prescription. Your elder brother is much better, but he is still a little weak. I am going to prescribe another course aimed at nourishing the lungs. After he finishes it, he should be fine. Dr. Li knew he wouldn't be able to extract much information and thus, no longer dwelled on it. He kept a mental note of the previous prescription, deciding to try it on other patients with lung disease in the future. Jiang Sanlang felt relieved knowing his second brother was doing well. He bowed to Dr. Li, thank you, Dr. Li, for your efforts. Dr. Li waved his hand, gave the prescription to Jiang San, took his consultation fee, packed up his medicine chest, and got up. Jiang Sanlang sent Dr. Li back to his pharmacy, got the medicine, and then cheerfully bought some New Year goods to take home. Just as he crossed Shigong Bridge, he heard some tumult in the village, not knowing what had happened. As soon as he entered the village, he saw a large crowd gathered in front of his eldest brother's house. A woman in her 50s was sitting in the middle of the crowd, slapping her thigh and weeping loudly. Ah! You wretched Jiang Lu, you deceived my maiden daughter with your sickly son, initially singing so many praises. I didn't expect you to harbor such malicious intent, aiming to harm my maiden daughter. Heavens! You are such a deceitful woman, isn't it enough your son is sick and frail, you even deceived my family. I will sue you for marriage fraud. The old woman was beating her legs and pounding the ground while crying aloud. A young woman stood beside her pretending to comfort her. Behind the woman stood a man in his 20s, scanning the surroundings with an unwelcoming face. This was unexpectedly his second sister-in-law, Ling, her mother old lady Chow, and her younger brother and sister-in-law. Hearing the old woman repeatedly mentioning the sickly child, Sanlang couldn't help but frown, plunging into the crowd. What happened? He asked his eldest brother standing by the door. Eldest brother Jiang was angry, second sister-in-law's mother came to make trouble at our house, forcing Erlang to divorce her daughter. She even accused us of concealing Erlang's illness and demanded a compensation of 30 taels of silver from us. 30 taels. Her family is really that bold. Jiang Sanlang asked, what does second brother have to say? Eldest brother Jiang sighed, Erlang was so angry, he fainted. He's lying in our parents' room. I'll go check on him. Jiang Sanlang stepped into the courtyard. At this time, Jiang Erlang was lying down on his parents' bed with closed eyes, his face as pale as paper, he looked like he had fainted from anger. Jiang Lu hugging him, incessantly crying while comforting him, Erlang, don't be angry, your illness is cured. Today, Dr. Li said that after a few days of nourishment, you will be as fit as a fiddle. Oh, my dear child, don't scare your mother. Seeing Erlang in this condition because of old lady Chow, Jiang Sanlang clenched his fist and immediately turned to leave the room. Ah, he really wanted to beat someone up. If it hadn't been for the fact that the old woman was his brother's mother-in-law, he would have loved to kick her out of the village. But, he couldn't act impulsively. She was his brother's mother-in-law, and this was his own family matter. He shouldn't act heedlessly and harm Erlang's marriage. Part 2 of the series ends here. Thank you for watching and listening. If you find it interesting, please give us a like, a comment and a subscription so that we have the motivation to make the next videos.